Welcome to the 401k Audit CPA Success Show, where we're 100% focused on helping companies across the United States prepare for their 401k audit. If you have 100 eligible participants in your 401k plan, then this podcast is for you.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's show. Another great topic here from Kim, who obviously is our audit director here at Summit CPA. And today we are going to talk about record keepers and third-party administrators. So, Kim, welcome to the show, and I can't wait to hear more about this topic.
Yeah. Thanks, Jamie, and welcome everyone to our topic today. We wanted to talk about this because it's a question that I get from our clients quite a lot. If you are an administrator for a 401k plan, in almost all cases, it wouldn't have to be this way, but we find most cases of the clients and prospective clients that we talk to, they use service providers to help with the administration of the plan. And we're going to talk today about either record keeping or third-party administrator. They go by different titles, and there's different levels of service you can get. So we're not going to get all hung up on titles today, but this is the service provider that would provide services primarily related to your participants. So they're the ones that deal with if your contributions, going into your plan and deferral rates, things like that. They're going to deal with loans, distributions, and then they're also going to do, in most cases, a lot of the compliance activities for your plan. So we wanted to talk about that. And the questions that I get are maybe for whatever reason, I don't really like the service provider I have, or maybe they changed personnel, and you don't like the newer person that they've assigned to you, or maybe it's just getting expensive. Could be a variety of things. Maybe they've made a lot of mistakes. So we get questions quite frequently about if I would want to change my record keeper, what should I look for? What kinds of things should I do as I'm trying to make that decision of either should I change or not? And if I'm going to change, which new provider should I select? So that's kind of what we were going to talk about today.
Awesome. Yeah, this sounds exciting. So again, I think like you said, there's lots of reasons for changes, and especially again, some people don't come to you and saying it's their first time buying or working with one. So I'm sure they're all about changes. So yeah, let's jump right into it. So what should we look for when we're looking for a new one?
Okay, well, the first thing I wanted to point out, of course, it's facts and circumstances based. So in each case, it's going to be slightly different. But the first thing that we recommend that you take a look at is just kind of the background of the service provider, just as you would do with any other provider, vendor that you might work with. You want to make sure that you're working with a reputable company. So you want to be asking them about how long have they been in the business, what's their background and experience, how many plans do they work with, what types of plans. We also recommend references, or maybe they can give you references or talk to current other clients that might be having a similar type of service provided to them that you would be looking for. That way you can find out what is the real experience like. We all know how it is working with salespeople that, they're the best ever, and it may not truly work out that way. So, we recommend that you do a little bit of due diligence and look in to their background. What can they provide? What level of experience do they have? And also that those references, I think, are key, or at least talking to another individual or company that's similar to what you're looking for.
So when you request references, can you request that okay, we're this type of company, this is the size of our plan, we'd like to talk to another company similar to that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know people sometimes are a little hesitant to do that. But we have to provide references to our clients. So we'll get new customers coming to us or prospective customers and asking, can I talk to a couple of your current audit clients? I want to see what their experience working with you is like. And we're happy to do that. And I think most reputable businesses are. So I don't think that's out of line to ask for that. Sometimes they will give you like canned references that they've prepared, which take those obviously with a grain of salt. But if you can actually talk to an individual, that's your best route if you can can get them to agree to doing that. So
I think having the requesting the industry and the size, I think makes it a little bit more. They have to filter it down a little bit more. So I know when people come to us for the CFO side and they say, "Oh, we're a digital agency about 3 million. Can we talk to another digital agency that's around 3 million and kind of see how they work with you?" So I think refining the question a little more also kind of gets you away from those canned responses.
Right, exactly. And it's really important here because you have different providers provide different levels of service. So you don't want to be talking to somebody that's maybe getting a lot more service and they're paying a lot more, and you're going to be paying less and expect less service. That wouldn't, obviously you're not comparing apples to apples. So yeah, very good suggestion. Another thing that we recommend is that you ask them, and you think about this yourself, do you want an assigned representative to work with your plan? So that would be, if I have a question or my employees and my participants have a question, they're going to go to Susie. Susie is my rep, and so I'm always working with Susie. Obviously, Susie is going to know your plan better. They're going to know the quirks of your payroll, the type of business you're in, the type of employees that you have. Are they hourly? Are they salary? They're going to understand all of those different complexities for your business compared to somebody else. Now, obviously, that costs more if you're going to do that. So it's a very good way to go and provide you a lot of extra information. And, you've got a direct number to call instead of calling 1-800 number. So there's a lot of benefits of doing it, but obviously it's more expensive. So definitely you'd want to think about how important is it to you? Are you willing to pay that little bit extra more? But then you also want to talk to them about how much more money are we talking about? What does it mean to have an assigned rep? I mean, just because you have an assigned rep doesn't mean they're going to be doing all the transactions for your plan necessarily. It might mean that, but it also may not. So if that's something you're interested in, you really need to kind of go in more depth with them about what does that mean? What level of service are they going to provide to you for that additional cost that you might be paying? So one more thing to look at. Another area that we kind of lump a bunch of things into is communication training, and connection with especially your participants. So some things here to ask them about: what types of materials do they have available to provide to your participants? So what booklets do they have, or canned email kind of communication they can provide? How do they provide it? Do they do it via email? Do they just put a bunch of material on their website? The participant's got to go look on the website. Do they have in-person training available if that's of interest to you? I mean, some providers like that. Some, again, you have to pay for that. Some don't really feel that's necessary. They've got a really tech savvy workforce that can go and find the stuff themselves. So those are the kinds of things that we think that you should consider. I mentioned tech savvy. It's also important to find out what options do they have available from a technology standpoint. So a lot of us today want to do things on our smartphone. So do they have an app that you can use? Will it work well if I'm just doing browser-based viewing on my cell phone or a tablet? Or is it really geared, it's maybe old school and we do more paper type transactions? And your employee base, maybe your employee base or maybe your company likes to do things paper. If that's the case, then obviously you don't want to go with a provider that's going to be more, we do things via text and cell phone and tablet. So it sounds kind of strange, but we have found that there are different providers with different levels of these services. So if you really want to be paper-based, and we have some clients that do, you don't want to go with the vendor that's going to be electronic, and vice versa. So again, definitely something to check out. You don't want to sign for a couple-year contract and then find out that that's a basic and it's not going to work.
Well, I think the important thing is and I think this is true for this decision or any decision you're making as a business, is kind of go into it with what are our top 3 priorities. And maybe, when you talk about this, is technology our top based in one of our most highest priorities, or is having a paper trail a little more higher priority?
Right.
So I think going into it with, these are really the top 3 things we're looking for from this provider. And then, asking those give you kind of those lead questions to ask into. So I think that's a really good point that, you need what one plan might be great for another, but not good for a different business. So it really depends on the
Right.
business.
Right. Yeah. Though this is not one size fits all by
Right.
any means here. The other thing along the technology side is their website. So there's going to probably be a couple of different websites, a website for your participants that they're going to go into to either sign up for the plan, change things like deferral rates, investments, name and address. And then there's going to be another website that's different that the plan is going to use. So the plan administrator is going to use to approve transactions, to submit contributions, to view reports. And I would highly recommend that you spend some time asking them to show you demos of both of those websites, just to look at what's out there. This goes to the training material we're talking about. So how much information is out there for participants? How much training material is out there for your staff as the company, for your plan administrator? And what if you get a new person, your plan administrator, leaves suddenly, and you've got to bring a new one on, and so now you've got to train them, and you don't have anybody with that background. This would be an opportunity to use resources at your provider, but obviously only if they have them and they're easily accessible and they're really easy documents to read. So that's another thing that I would look for on the website. But I'd also look for just ease of use. How easy is it to navigate around? Does it have the kind of reporting capability that you want? If you're used to monitoring your plan a certain way, you want to make sure you can do that on this website. So obviously we all look for websites that are, user friendly and easy to navigate around, and this is no different. So you definitely want to check into that on both sides and make sure you see both sides, because they will be different. They'll either be different websites completely or different levels of access.
And so how's this work? Do they usually give you a demo where you can kind of have them walk through it for you, but then do they also give you like a 1 week trial password where you can kind of like play around in there? How does it normally work?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on, again, the provider and their size. Obviously, the larger size providers, they all should be able to show you their website. I mean, that should be not a problem. But the larger providers usually have like a sandbox type website. It won't be the actual website, because obviously that would have confidential information on it, but it'll be a mock-up one that you could go in and you could play around. And so you could actually look at what's there. You could try entering a new participant to see how that works. You could, as a participant, see if I want to change my address. How easy is that to do? So the larger providers will have that. The smaller ones, probably not. They're probably only going to be able to show you what it looks like. But if you, as we talked about before, if you've kind of already made a list of here are the things that are really important to me, again, your participants, your own staff that deal with the plan, what they need. So if you can kind of jot down, here's my most important things I need, or what I'm missing. I'm really looking, what I have is fine, but I'm really missing these areas. Then you've got a list that you can go over with them, and then they can show you. You can get on a Zoom call and have them walk you through and show you. So that would be another option for the smaller providers. We talked about this website, so another thing you want to consider is security. And so that's access. What are the controls around access? So ID, password, how strong are the IDs, how often they have to change the password, what kind of password strength do they require? I mean, all those basics. It's no different here. It's a website. So all of those standard things. If you're a larger provider, I would consider bringing in some of your IT personnel into the conversation and have them take a look at the security controls. Have them one-on-one talk to an IT professional at this provider, because you're going to have some very confidential information going back and forth. The last thing you want to have is a breach that impacts your company, because ultimately you will be responsible. Even though it's a provider, you're hiring them. If there's a breach and exposes your company or your employee information, obviously that's going to be a problem for you. So security is very important. And then that brings up another area, and that's controls. This provider is going to be doing a lot of transactional work for you, and you want to make sure that they have skilled personnel, they have good processes, good systems, and good controls in place. You don't want to turn over the processing for your plan to someone and then they start making a lot of errors. not only is that just a problem in and of itself, it generates a lot of admin time for you to make sure to get those corrected. You're going to have to listen to your employees complaining. So, it's just a road you don't want to go down. Now, a couple of things you can do here. They may have some like booklets or written material prepared about their controls and how things work. There is something called a SOC report. So if this is a larger provider, you can ask. I mean, I would put that on my list just to ask them. Do you have one of these? If you do, that will clearly lay out the controls they have, and depending on the type of report, it might even have an independent accountant opinion about the controls, and they would have tested them. So that would be your best bet. But a lot of smaller TPAs are not going to have that. So you can certainly have a conversation with them. You can ask them to walk through some of these types of transactions. What do I do if I have a new employee? How would I get them signed up? What are you going to do in that case? Someone wants to take a loan. How is that going to work? And that will give you a sense of what they're going to do, what you're going to have to do, and what controls are in place. So you can ask them questions like, well, what if my employee tries to do this and they really, you shouldn't be allowing them to take a loan? How would you catch that? Ask those kinds of leading questions and see how they respond.
So is this, I mean, I guess in my mind, and maybe I'm off base here, but like to me, when you're dealing with employee information and you're dealing with such confidential stuff, like I'm not sure I would want to go to a provider that doesn't have an audited SOC report. I mean, is that something that you would recommend as well, or what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, again, I think it depends on the size of your company and the size of your plan. I mean, you may not be able to afford the larger
Yeah.
providers that are going to have the SOC reports are very expensive
Yeah.
to have completed. So definitely that would be your best bet. I would definitely go that way if you can. But if you can't and you have a smaller provider, you're just going to have to spend the time yourself investigating those controls. So again, it's, you've got the little scale here that you're weighing. Do I want to put my time into it, and what's your level of knowledge? If you've got people in your company that work with the plan, they really understand it, they know the transactions, maybe they're fine with handling that themselves. If you've got people that have really relied on service providers and don't really understand, then you also got to consider how much knowledge do they have, how good of an evaluation are they going to be able to do, because they may not really understand what controls should be there. So again, it's a facts and circumstances. You're going to have to kind of decide that yourself, but definitely the security issue is a huge one, because in today's day and age, we see it every day in the news, situations where somebody's hacked and the data gets out, and just think about how that's going to look if it gets out in the paper, that even though it's not your business confidential information, not your customers, but it's your employees.
Even not even in the paper, just imagine having to communicate that to your employees. Like
Yes.
typing that email doesn't sound like fun, and then having the Zoom call, like, oh, by the way, all your personal information has been stolen.
Yeah, and we don't know by who, and we don't know what they're doing with it, and yes, and there's regulatory kind of boundaries around that as well. So depending on where you are, you might have to do things for your state may require you to do things, offer credit monitoring and all that to your employees. So it's just a path you don't want to go down. So definitely things to consider. We mentioned kind of regulatory, and the last thing I had on my list, next to last, is compliance. So more than likely, this provider is going to do a lot of compliance activities for you. So they're going to do things like prepare your 5500. They may even file it for you. Again, it just depends. They're going to conduct your discrimination testing. They may need to process corrections off of the discrimination testing. They're going to help with audit support. If you would need an audit, they'll help you determine, do you need an audit? And then if you do, they're going to help get the auditor documentation. There are different disclosures that need to be provided. They're going to prepare those. If those are not correct, then there's a fine to you as the plan sponsor for providing inaccurate disclosures. They may distribute the disclosures. So it just depends again on what level of service they're going to provide. But every one of those things I mentioned, there are penalties if they're not either done correctly or they're not done timely, they're not distributed to everyone. These folks are also more than likely going to prepare your plan document. So you want to make sure that they're again, goes back to the background and experience, because whatever that plan document says is what you have to live with. So you don't want someone that you're going to tell them, here are all the provisions I want, and then they go off and that's not what they put in the document. They put something else. Well, now you've got to live with provisions that either you didn't want or they're not the ones that you wanted. And it can be very expensive. They could put in things that you need to defer on compensation you didn't want to defer on. So now you've got to make up that difference. So this can be, it goes to the heart of what you're hiring them to do. And so it's very important to ask them, what are they going to do? How are they going to do it? What background do they have? How skilled are they at this? But also to avoid potential misunderstandings. So you thought they were going to distribute all of those disclosures. That's not what they agreed to. So no one's distributing them. And then you get to an audit or a regulatory review, and everybody's pointing fingers at everybody else. So again, that's a very important discussion, and we see a lot of mistakes made in this area. So definitely an area you want to follow up on.
So do you normally get a signed contract or an agreement that like states all that? Okay, these are the things we'll do, and is that something you could run by your auditor and say, hey, this is what they're showing? Is this sufficient?
Yeah, absolutely. They're usually things, they're called a service agreement, or some type of, it's not the plan document, it's usually a separate agreement. And there might be multiples. So they might have different agreements for different components. And yeah, absolutely, you can do that. You can ask for copies of those and say, hey, I'd like to see what those agreements look like. If you've got a legal department, absolutely, you'd want to run all this stuff by them. Or, if you've got an outside attorney, it might be worth asking them to just peruse it, because it can be very expensive. If you make mistakes here, fixing it later can be very expensive. So spending a little bit of time and even money up front is probably to your benefit. So.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think, yeah, anybody that really understands what you're looking for, having them take a look at it is really important. So I think like the auditor, legal, having a separate eye look at it to make sure that you're not missing anything is really important. So real quick, I know you said you had one more topic. I do want to throw our email address out there. So we're always looking for new topics, new guests, questions that we can kind of run through in the show. So if you have any questions for us, it's audit@summitcpa.net. Again, AUDIT@SUMMITCPA.net. So would love to hear from you. So Kim, let's
Absolutely.
what other topics do you have for us in this
Yeah,
area?
let's just kind of wrap this up real quick. Goes without saying, you'd want to talk about cost.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
I that's probably at the top of everybody's list, but so I didn't make a big deal about that. But obviously, you want to consider what they're providing versus what you're going to be charged, and is it reasonable, and and who's going to pay the cost. Is that you're going to charge it back to participants, or is that something the company's going to pay? So those are, again, areas you'd want to make sure you understand, so there isn't a misunderstanding that now they're charging your participants and you thought you were paying it, and so now you got to worry that you're overcharging participants, which again is a regulatory issue. So not going to spend a lot of time about cost. I think most people can figure that one out.
Real quick on that cost. Sorry, Kim.
Sure.
Yeah, it sounds like just from the previous things you've said that there is quite a bit of variety there. So like there is kind of a Lamborghini plan and there's a Ford Focus plan. So it does sound like there's a lot of different things you can get here. So, I mean, again, I don't want to pass that over so it's like not like you're going to look at like $100 versus $250. It's going to vary quite a bit. It sounds like based on what you're looking for.
Absolutely. And usually they will provide you, just like any other service provider would, kind of different levels of service. So here's the kind of the cheaper version, if you will. Obviously, that's going to have fewer services provided. And then they'll have, maybe a middle of the road and then a more expensive one, or, who knows how many varieties, and different providers, because you're probably going to shop around. So you're probably going to talk to 2 or 3 different providers at least, and they're going to have different variations on this too. So again, one size does not fit all here. And you may go in thinking, I want, maybe the lower end, and they show you something in the middle and you're like, I never even thought I could have that. And so I think it's worth, even if you love your provider and you have no issues, it doesn't hurt to go shop around. And maybe you end up right where you started, but it's not a bad idea to look around, because there could be very well things out there your current provider can't provide, somebody else can.
Or maybe they can provide it, that just you haven't asked for it. So maybe you learn about something new that's out there, and you can go back to your provider and be like, hey, I heard these guys are providing this. Is this something you could do for us? So
Yeah, absolutely. Great idea. The last thing I wanted, and this is not something people typically do, and I don't want to say it's controversial, but it's probably not at the top of everybody's list. But just as you would be leaving one provider and going to another, as you're talking to a potential new provider, you want to find out from them what happens if I do sign with you and I stay with you for a while, and then for whatever reason, I decide I want to go somewhere else. They're sitting with a lot of your data, and it could be years worth of data. It's current employees, former employees, who knows what kind of data that they would be sitting with. And you might leave in the middle of the year. So now I'm going to a different provider. You've got part of the year's data. I got to get that over to the other provider. So if I were to sign with you and then later I make a decision to move away, what does that process look like? What are you going to agree to help me with? Because one of the things we've seen, and we see this fairly regularly, is that for whatever reason, one of our clients switches from a provider to another provider. They don't think about the timing of that. They don't think about the compliance issues with that. And they don't think about that transition at all. They think that I go, just like you'd switch payroll providers. So we find people think about, as long as I get through that last payroll with that company and I'm starting up my next payroll over with company B, that's all I really need to worry about. And that's a huge mistake, because at the end of the year, just think of your payroll. You got to produce W-2s, you've got other tax reporting, you've got to support regulatory requests. I'm going to come in as the auditor and say, I need last year's payroll report. Oh, well, we switched payroll providers. I don't have that anymore. Well, I don't just walk away and say, oh, okay, you didn't have it. You've got to go get it. So that same thing comes up with a 401k plan provider. So it is very important that as you're talking to a new provider, you think 2 steps ahead. What happens if I later on, for whatever reason, want to switch away from them to another provider? How is that going to work, and how much support are you going to provide? What we typically see is once you tell your current provider, hey, I made a decision, I'm going to move over here, they kind of wash their hands of you, because a lot of the payments stop, so you're not paying them anymore. So it's very difficult to get them to support that transition. And it's not the case in every case, but it does happen quite often. So very important. And probably a good idea to check with your current provider too. before you cut ties with them. So
yeah, it is really important, because you definitely want that support, and you want to be able to move over without a bunch of bumps. And if there are bumps, you have to solve those yourself. So it's a really important question.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Great, Kim. So I thought this was a great topic. I think it was very informative as always. Anything else that I know you kind of went through your list? Anything else that you thought of as you were going through it?
No, I think, just to kind of sum up here, before you get started on these conversations, make a list, look at what you got, look at what you don't have, what you'd like, and then just kind of start from there. And definitely cost is important, but it shouldn't be, as we always say, shouldn't be the most important. This plan is very important. It's important to your employees, important to the participants, highly regulated. So very important you get it right. So take some time.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, great topic, Kim, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you.
Enjoyed this episode? Visit our website at summitcpa.net to get more tips and strategies for achieving 401k audit success. We're here to be a resource with ever-changing rules and regulations.